BL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the country. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of over there? Because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They say this all the time. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip from The Herd with Colin Cowherd talking about the 49ers beating the Lions. That game was so exciting. I mean, it really was. I had so much fun watching that game, especially because I think the Chiefs Ravens game was definitely a letdown. It just wasn't that fun. Honestly, it wasn't a good watch personally. Again, I obviously, if you're a Chiefs fan, then obviously you're pretty excited and you probably enjoyed that game, but I thought it was a pretty boring game personally. So just from like a more outside perspective, this game had it all, right? Like a complete someone who like doesn't know anything about football, or just a complete casual fan who doesn't know any of these players, would be able to enjoy the 49ers Detroit Lions game. I mean, it had, big leads, and then comebacks and interceptions, and, hitting all people's helmets, like just crazy, crazy stuff. That was just a very, very exciting game. I think the big talk of the town is most definitely Brock Purdy, and it seems like people are still going back and forth between who Brock Purdy is and who Brock Purdy isn't. So I'm interested to see what Colin has to say. I definitely have some strong opinions as per usual, but let's get in to see what Colin has to say with regard to this game, and we can go from there.
All right, here we go. It is a Monday, live in Los Angeles. It's The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, lots and lots and lots to discuss. 1 hour from now, where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. J-Mac, we've seen this dance before. The Niners and Kansas City, arguably the best roster against the greatest coach and quarterback maybe the league's ever seen. It was a great one last time. This time the Niners will have a better offense, not quite as good a defense, but we got a classic.
Yeah, should be a good one. I have no early read on the Super Bowl. It's a tough one. Feels like a toss-up, and the line says the same.
Well, let's start with this. Detroit, San Francisco, and I just want to talk about the Lions first. I'll get to the Niners in a bit. Did the Niners win it, or did the Lions lose it? And I got to be honest with you, it kind of felt like the latter.
I just want to stop real fast and say that, because I didn't think this is the direction he was going to go in, honestly. I definitely think the Lions lost that game. No question. They had every reason and every chance to win that game, and I think Campbell really lost this game without a doubt. So
it took a lot to beat Detroit themselves. A reckless head coach, a ball that ricocheted off a defender and became a 51-yard San Francisco catch, a drop pass or three, and a key fumble by a talented rookie. Suddenly a 24-10 lead melted, and the Lions were playing catch-up on the road, and here comes the Niners pass rush. Detroit is an excellent young football team. San Francisco's an excellent veteran football team. And, brother, did you see it? I like Dan Campbell, a former player. But he often coaches like one, reckless and too emotional. Dan, it's 24-10. You're on the road. Probably should kick a field goal, make it a 3-score game. But he didn't. And he has created a tough, cool alpha vibe. But the general needs to be above the infantry, to make stoic, strategic, unemotional decisions. Dan Campbell lives for every play. That's what players do. That's not what leaders should do. And what's concerning with Detroit, they got the alpha and the tough and the aggressive. But the cerebral part of the Lions organization now, O.C. Ben Johnson, on that staff, he's the brainiac. He's leaving. He's taking a head coaching job. And reckless has never hoisted trophies in this sport. And there's a line, I get it, between aggressive and reckless. But doesn't it feel like Dan crosses it regularly? We saw it with Dallas. What are you doing? Again, the general, separate. The bite the kneecap stuff. Listen, man, he's easy to like. It was funny. And sad Detroit finally had a coach big as a house, cool, a vibe, a culture. There's a lot to like. But winning a beer drinking contest is cool too in college. And then you get a job and you have real responsibilities. It's called being a grown-up. Detroit now needs to move into the next phase. Work smarter, not always harder.
So there seems to be kind of two ways to look at this, especially with Dan Campbell specifically. The question is, a lot of people say, well, Dan Campbell is the one that built this team. Not obviously the GM did, but he's the one that built the culture, and he's the one that is the he was the first coach to really turn the Lions around and to build this winning culture essentially. And I think, and so people say, well, listen, if that's the case, and this aggressiveness, this is the aggressiveness that got them there, and that's why they're here, and so you can't abandon them. And I really disagree with that largely, especially with this whole idea where they say you can't judge the outcome. You have to judge, you judge whether it works out or it doesn't work. You can't judge the decision based off of that. And I kind of say that's just not true, especially in sports. Like, of course you're getting judged on the outcome, right? Like that is how this works. And it was objectively bad decision making to go for it in those situations, to go for it on fourth down. A commenter said something that was interesting. He said, he thinks that Campbell went for it at the wrong situations, that he should have gone for it at the end of the first half, but then didn't go for it, but shouldn't have gone for it on the other two tries. And I think that was an interesting point to make as well. But at this time, there's this vibe that going for field goals or even punting it is just wrong or is weak or conservative. And no, sometimes it's the smart decision to do. In war, okay, you retreat a lot, okay? There's lots of times that when you're in battle, you retreat. That is not because you're weak. That is not because you're damaged. That is not because you're hurt. That is not because, it's the only choice you have. But it is the smartest choice you have. And that is something that, Dan Campbell can't let go of in this regard. And it really, really, really hurt them. And it was a difference in this game. If they just kicked the field goal in one of those two times, it changes everything. As well as you're also not giving up a great field position by missing it, by not able to convert on fourth down. And so it's one of those things where, and I kind of used this reference yesterday, where when you play this way, you can say, it can kind of help you sleep at night because you say, well, this is the way we're doing it. We stay true to our identity and this is what we're about. And so we have to be proud of ourselves here. And it's like, yeah, that's a nice little platitude to say to yourself, but it was the wrong decision. And you made the wrong decision. And then other people will say, well, if he caught the ball, it was a great throw. He should have just caught the ball. But that's what happens. People drop passes all the time in the NFL. So that's the gamble. That's the gamble of going for it on these fourth downs, is that, of course, a drop pass is possible or a bad throw or whatever. Because people will say, well, if he just made a better throw, it gets converted. Or if he just passes the ball, just converted. And it's like, well, that's just football in general then. Theoretically, every time Patrick Mahomes throws the ball, if he just throws it to a receiver and the receiver catches it, then the score would be 100 to, nothing, right? But that's those big question marks in the roll of the dice. You don't know, is he going to catch it? Is it going to be a good throw? Is he going to be blitzed? Is he not going to be blitzed? Like, what's going to, what type of coverage are you going to get? And that's the risk. And you're up. He has the Detroit Lions have a chance to go up 3 scores. And instead, he goes for it, doesn't get it, gives the momentum back to the 49ers, and then, gives them short field position. They score a touchdown, and now they have like all this new life. And it was just unfortunate because going into this game, this was one of the big question marks I had. I had 2 question marks going into this game. It was Dan Campbell, because I said he's an absolute wild card. I kept saying you have no idea if he's going to go for it on 4th down. You don't know if he's going to do a fake punt on his own 30. I was like, you just have no idea. And I was like, so that makes it very, very hard and unpredictable. That proved to be correct. And then Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was my other question mark, which also proved to be correct because he did not have a good beginning of that game. You know, he was very fortunate, especially what Colin alluded to with the 50-yard pass that bounced off of Detroit Lions' head and then ended up being caught, right? Like that is one of those completely fluke situations that you just never see, very rarely see, I should say. And those were the big question marks. You know, Christian McCaffrey was going to play great. You know, Shanahan was going to call a great game, and you know, Ben Johnson, the OC for the Detroit Lions, was going to call a great game, and he did. And I feel for the Lions because I think they have the potential to see what happened with the Eagles this past season. The past 2 seasons, I guess, for the Eagles, because, you know, they went to the Super Bowl, they have a great roster, but then all the brains left the building. You know, the OC and the defensive coordinator left, and because of that, the Eagles significantly went downhill. You know, they struggled really badly, and they kept Sirianni, which I think was the wrong decision. And now you have the kind of similar situation with Dan Campbell. You know, he's going to, at the very least, lose his offensive coordinator, and that is why that offense is everything. It is not because of Dan Campbell. It's just not. He's not calling the plays. He's not designing the plays. I mean, like, yeah, he gives like the thumbs up or thumbs down in terms of like go for it on 4th down or not. So like that's his, you know, his fingerprint on the offense, but he's not the one that's the real brains behind it. And so you're going to lose him. And there's the chance now that the Lions could really just not be the same. You know, I mean, there's that is a true possibility. You just don't know because they do have a really, really good team, but the Eagles had a really, really good team with really, really good players, and they couldn't play at all because coaching is so important. And I think that is something that a lot of fans overlook, is just how important being, you know, coaching really, really is. I stand by this. Patrick Mahomes is not Patrick Mahomes without Andy Reid. He is still amazing and he is still great, but Andy Reid puts Patrick Mahomes in a situation to succeed. And again, ask Patrick Mahomes. He in no way will downplay how important Andy Reid has been to him, you know, to his success. And same thing with Tom Brady. Even though it was on the different side of the ball, the defense supported a lot of Super Bowl victories, which of course boosted Tom Brady's, you know, myth and legend lore, which is, you know, elevated him to GOAT status. All of those things really, really matter. And so when you lose an amazing offensive coordinator, an amazing head coach, your team suffers. I mean, it just does. You know, if this is the best that happens with the Lions, that's a very real possibility. And it's just a missed opportunity because they really, really had the chance to win this game. They had every opportunity to win this game. You know, they had the 49ers absolutely reeling at home, floundering. Brock Purdy's throwing balls, you know, miles over people's heads, could have been intercepted like 2 or 3 times. They had it going good, and they blew it. They were too aggressive. Another point that I can reference is reminds me of another game for the Eagles, ironically, with Nick Foles, where he was backup quarterback, but he came in for the playoffs the year after they had already won the Super Bowl, and they were rolling against a better team, the better Saints team, and they were going good. Everything was going good, and it was just like, okay, now just be conservative, be smart, be heads up. And instead, they tried to push the ball downfield, forced a throw, led to an interception, and that completely changed the whole flow of the game, and they ended up losing. You have to be smart, and that is something that second to no one is Andy Reid, which I'm going to talk about later, and I'm going to probably use the same example with Patrick Mahomes, and I'm going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and both of them are second to none in that process of not making those mistakes and not forcing the ball down the field. And then you have other coaches like a Dan Campbell who just kind of repeatedly makes mistakes in that regard. You have a lot of coaches like that, and it really comes back to haunt you, especially come time in the playoffs.
Be emotional, but never be unhinged, right? Like, mom and dad, it's your license, it's your car. You're going to sit at the big boy table now. And I loved the first phase of Detroit. From awful to alpha to good, a stacked roster, They were here for the moment and earned every inch of it. But it's time now to pivot to what Kansas City does in big games, or what the Niners did in the second half. Efficiency, not losing your mind. There are phases in life. There are stages. There are chapters. This was a cool one. It's a learning lesson, hopefully, you'd think. But Dan Campbell, after, did not apologize for what's perceived to be recklessness.
Of course he's not.
I told those guys, this may have been all we shot. Do I think that? No. Do I believe that? No. However, I know how hard it is to get here. I'm well aware. And it's going to be twice as hard to get back to this point next year than it was this year. That's the reality. And if we don't have the same hunger and the same work, which is a whole nother thing, once we get the offseason, then we got no shot of getting back here.
Listen, I like Dan. He's never going to be McVay, Shanahan. I don't think he's LaFleur, certainly not Andy Reid. I like parts of him. What you hope as a Lions fan is that you can maintain the alpha and the toughness and the aggressiveness, but ditch the recklessness. Unhinged against Dallas. 24-10 lead. Listen, so much I like about Dan, but you could have made it a 3-score game. People say playoffs are different. Well, yeah, they mean more. Mistakes are okay. Getting occasionally overly emotional is okay, but you got to learn from it and not defend it. We'll see next year.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And I think where you go from here, this is what's interesting if Dan Campbell grows as a coach. Because you have to learn from this. And a lot of times, sometimes you don't grow because by growing, you have to, in some ways, admit you were wrong in the past. So in another situation, let's say in the playoffs again, if he's in the playoffs again or whatever the situation may be, and it's a very similar situation, he may go for it again, because if he doesn't, then that's kind of, in a way, admitting that that was a mistake last time, or that was the wrong decision. And I don't know. I don't know who Dan Campbell will prove to be. And I don't know him being the head coach, since he's not this, GOAT coach, so to speak, right? He's not considered to be a McVay, a Shanahan, or Reid, or whatever. I don't know if there's any, if anyone has any type of handcuffs on him in any kind of way, right? If someone now goes to Dan, whether it's a GM, the owner, even, whoever, isn't just like, hey, I love what you did, everything was great, I want to pull back the aggression by 10%, okay? In that game, if you went for it 3 times, in the future, I want to see you only go for it 1 out of 3 times, 2 out of 3 times. I don't know, right? I don't know how that, the ins and outs of that specific organization. I don't know if Campbell just has complete free run and it's like, hey, you're the football guy, you do everything in terms of what happens, in the game. I really don't know. So I think you have to just move forward from this and hopefully learn and grow. But they just don't always learn and grow. Sirianni, for instance, did not learn and grow. Andy Reid, it took him literally decades to learn and grow, and now he's grown into being the greatest coach of all time, especially the greatest offensive head coach of all time. So, I think it's a question mark as to where the Lions go from here. Who's their new OC? I don't know if they're losing their DC or not, but who they're definitely losing their OC, and who that all is. So, with that being said, let me know what you all think. Would love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments below. Definitely please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community, and I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts, and would love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.